Some years ago, I heard of a guy who wanted to stop smoking. He knew why he wanted to stop smoking. Clearly, smoking is not good for your health. And he tried many times, but didn't succeed. You know, he fell off the wagon over and over again. That's common. I mean, smoking is a serious physical addiction. It's very hard to stop. But then all that changed when he came into contact with an expert motivational speaker, his 5-year-old daughter, who found out somehow in the playground or on TV or somewhere, she found out what smoking does to a person. And she came into the TV room one night, distraught. Daddy! And he's like, what's wrong, sweetheart? What's wrong? And she said, Daddy, I don't want you to die. And he stopped smoking. There and then, cold turkey, same day, never went back. Now, he got the best kind of motivation that day, a kind of motivation he never had before. You know, it pulled on his heartstrings to see his daughter in that state. But what changed? How come he was able to stop smoking that day when he'd never managed it before? Something fundamental shifted in him when his daughter came to him in that state. I mean, at this time of year, many of us are thinking about making changes. It's a time of New Year's resolutions. Now, you may have made a New Year's resolution. You may be thinking, maybe I ought to make a New Year's resolution, but I'm not really sure what to pick. Maybe you've made 16 different New Year's resolutions and you're not sure where to start. Or maybe you've made some sort of vague resolution about, I should do more sewing this year, but you're not quite sure how much is more or how to really measure that. So let's talk a little bit about New Year's resolutions. First thing to say is you don't have to pick a New Year's resolution if you don't want to. This is actually a really crappy time of year to try to change anything. We're in the middle of winter, there's not much sunlight, we're all a bit low energy. It's a good time of year to rest and reflect and hibernate and nest. It's not a great time of the year to be getting a huge surge of energy to change your life. So you're quite within your rights not to set a New Year's resolution and to pick a better time of year for that. The spring would be a great time, for example. If you do want to change something, I would advise, if you would like my advice, pick one thing. Just one thing. Make it easy on yourself. Maximise your chance of success. Pick just one thing you want to change. And make it easy not just to succeed, make it easy to ace it. So instead of saying, I want to sew more this year, think about when you want to sew, how much you want to sew. I want to sew for an hour every Sunday, because that's achievable. Make it something that's easy to succeed at and easy to exceed your own expectations. Give yourself an easy win. Make it challenging enough that it's going to help you move forward, but don't make it so hard on yourself that you're going to disappoint yourself. I mean, these are all pieces of advice you might have heard before. There's a cliche we always hear at this time of year about setting SMART goals. Specific, measurable, what's the third one? A is for achievable, realistic, and time-defined. And that's the old acronym that we've all heard a million times. I'm going to let you in on the reason why New Year's resolutions often fail. Because you may have been not wanting to set a resolution because it's such a cliche that at this time of year the bookshop is full of New Year, New You books, and people have all these great intentions, but by the end of January most people have already fallen off the wagon of whatever it is they wanted to do. So here's a little secret I'm going to let you in on. The process of change is an 8-step process. This is something I've learned from a mentor of mine, Dr. Julie, who I'm doing a course with this year on change. She teaches that change, real lasting change in a person's life is an 8-step process. And at New Year, most people kind of bungee in at step 7. They decide what they want to do and they think they're going to get there on willpower alone. Whereas in fact, there's a lot more to it. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an insight into a couple of the things that make a change work. First of all, that guy who stopped smoking got a very powerful part of that puzzle, which is that he got very clear and emotionally connected to what's going to happen if he doesn't change. He got an insight into what would happen if his health deteriorated and he eventually died, and how distraught his family would be. He got a real scary insight that day his daughter came into the room about what was going to happen if he didn't change. I mean, a real, like, twisting the knife experience. And that is one of the things you need to make a permanent change in your life. You need to get really clear on how bad it's going to be if you don't change. You know, you really need to, like, emotionally manipulate yourself into this change being your only option. This has to change today because the alternative is unthinkable. And whatever it takes to get you into that place of what's gonna happen if you don't change, that's where motivation comes from. It isn't about, I'm gonna have the willpower to change. It's got to be a real emotional connection to what's going to go wrong, how your life is going to be destroyed if you don't change this thing. It's like really play it up and dramatize how life is going to be unbearable and life is not going to be working anymore if you don't change, and all the knock-on effect and the ripple effect it's going to have if you don't change. That's the sort of motivation that makes a change a no-brainer. So you get over the inertia of not wanting to change. It's more comfortable not to change, so you need to push yourself out of that comfort zone. The other little clue I'll give you is it's useful to know what your excuses are going to be, because however motivated you are on January the 1st or 2nd to change something in your life, you know that in 3 weeks' time you're going to have lost some of that motivation and you're going to feel like, it's winter, it's cold, I don't really want to go to the gym, I don't really want to go out for a run, I don't really want a salad, I just want to binge watch The Crown instead of sewing. You know, you don't want to do it anymore. So you need to get clear now on what your usual excuses are. What are the excuses that are stopping you? What are the excuses that you're going to use in 3 weeks' time and have an answer ready? It's about getting ahead of yourself and knowing where you're going to fall short and being ready for it. So I hope that gives you just a couple of ideas. This is not a time where you should feel pressured into making any kind of change. Midwinter is a better time to be resting and reflecting. And here's actually, I'm going to tell you what I do at New Year. You know that I journal, and I made a video about that earlier in the year. What I do between Christmas and New Year is I read my journal for the whole of last year. And I do it over like a week or two, but I read everything I've written, because when I'm writing every night in my journal, I've got a very sharp focus on what happened today and how I feel today, but I'm not necessarily seeing the big picture. When you go back and read the whole year, I mean, think of it month by month as reading a chapter by chapter, you get the big picture on what last year was about. I got a really clear picture reading through the whole year on what was really going on with me last year. I got a really deep insight into things that I knew were happening in my life, but I wasn't taking seriously. For example, I knew that I lead a very busy life, I work hard, I got a lot on my plate, and you know, I deal with a bit of anxiety here and there. But I realised reading back through my journals that I'm kind of paying lip service a bit to what effect that anxiety was having on my life on a meta level. And reading back through it all, I could see how all year I was going on about, oh, it's been stressful, oh, I'm so stressed out, oh, I went to my yoga class and I felt much better, oh, now I'm stressed out again, oh, and I did a bit of meditation, oh, I felt so much better, and then I get stressed out again, and then I actually had a day off and I felt better, and then I got stressed out, and I really saw the big picture of like this roller coaster of anxiety I'm on. And I was able to sit back and go, wow, and really starting to look at how I can get serious about changing this in my life, just in small day-to-day ways, and making more time for myself, making more time to meditate and do yoga. And actually sounds a lot like a New Year's resolution, but it's very different from I'm going to do this differently, I'm going to change on January the 1st. It's much more like a sense of self-awareness about what happened last year and how I want this year to be different in very subtle ways. It's having more of an awareness of where your life is that gives you that motivation, that meta motivation of, yeah, here's where I think I want to go now instead. I would recommend, if you would like a recommendation, that instead of going in with your head and saying, yes, I'm going to change this year, go in with your heart. Be very quiet and reflective about how last year was for you. Look back through your calendar or your diary or your journal. You know, make a little review of last year and how it went, and just very quietly make little changes, tiny little changes, because little changes build up. Little steps turn into big steps. I would like to wish you a very happy new year, a very happy new decade. Don't be too hard on yourself at New Year. Make small observations, make small changes to be kinder to yourself. And pick one thing. Make it easy on yourself, because it's small changes that sometimes make the biggest difference.